Bolton's weekly wrap-up.
Hello, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. Happy Earth Day. Did you know?
It's Earth Day. Yes, it is Earth Day. We've been social mediaing it ourselves.
Good.
Yeah.
Well done, you. Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of Burgess and Bolton's weekly wrap-up, where we look at everything to do with the London market, technology, change, innovation. This week, we're going to take a bit of a kind of preview of the Digital Claims conference, which is happening next Thursday. We've got some interesting survey results I'm going to show you, Ben, and we can just have a quick chat about them. And it's actually quite a nice tee up for London Market Claims, which is coming up in October. But there's obviously a lot of interest and work going on in the claims arena at the moment. But as always, we'll start off with the news. And we were both on holiday last week, Ben, and I was a day into my holiday and opened the paper, and there we are. The Guardian. Extinction Rebellion managed to shut down the headquarters of Lloyd's.
You have no new messages.
I've got no new messages.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, Jeremy. You've got no new messages.
Can you believe it?
Yeah, it was about the only piece of news I really read about insurance, but it obviously hit the headlines. XR get in there again with another interesting, quite a benign kind of demonstration, really. I'm not sure why they shut the market. I think Lloyd's came out with the safety of its employees and all that sort of thing. I don't think there was anyone in there anyway.
No, well, that was it. I mean, they do this stuff really well.
Did anyone notice the difference?
Yeah. Let's know in the chat. Yeah, they do this well, don't they? They manage to do these stunts that grab the headlines. They cut through, don't they? The image.
It's good. It's creative now. Actually, I think they're much more creative in their visuals. So they're moving and developing quite cleverly, actually. I think in lots of this because basically these are great for press coverage, aren't they, and social media, because you just have to put the photo up. But it's very clever, yeah. And then they use iconic institutions like Lloyd's helps all that as well as a backdrop.
Indeed. And of course,
it's very symbolism. Yeah. It's all symbolism.
And you would have thought it'd been a great opportunity for Lloyd's and the London market to put forward the other side of the case, because I know for a fact that there are many initiatives going on, underwriters and brokers supporting new products that are helping innovative new businesses that are working more sustainable ways, or wind farms or solar, things like that. But
this
was a statement from Lloyd's, which I thought was a bit weak, really. Lloyd's supports safe constructive engagement and climate change, and we're working to support a reasonable transition. I think this isn't the first time this has happened. They've done the coal outside before, and it's obviously a part of an ongoing campaign. So you would have thought they got the response a bit better than this. So I thought it was a bit disappointing, really, because there is.
Yes, I did. I read it as well, and I would agree. I think that it was a bit. The aim was to kind of sort of neutralise things, really, but that's counter to what Lloyd's says when it's acting on its own PR, which is to say we're really trying to get ahead of the curve on net zero and so on. So I agree with you. I think it's a little bit watery, really. And I think. I mean, I understand it's not easy and it's quite risky, but I think. And there are some things, obviously, that Lloyd's perhaps doesn't want to get into too much discussion about. It's a fair point was made, I think, by someone on LinkedIn that it's a long-term market. Just the idea that in any of these, I get, and to some extent, I support this kind of pressure, but because it's important. But equally you can't just pull out overnight, and in these things, and things have to change. So I think the a responsible transition is probably quite an important phrase, but actually you feel there could be more engagement, really, perhaps. I mean, I wonder if they perhaps ask ER people to come on to one of their committees, although they'd be fairly bored. That's one of the things that they'd find out straight away.
That is true. I'll tell you what was underreported in this story. Did you see this?
What?
Look, Arsene Wenger. Can you see him in the background then?
Oh, yes. Arsene
Who'd have
Wenger.
thought it?
Where's he? Thought he was retired. He's obviously found something to do.
He's in the background there above the policeman.
Good man. Good man.
Well done, Arsene. So there we go.
I like it.
Right.
Yeah.
Keep it with Lloyd's. Got Lloyd's Lab. Ben, you were going to talk about this?
Yeah, good article. Insider in full. So they have, as they occasionally do, gone to town on an issue or a theme. And this is about the Lloyd's Lab. So I thought it was interesting. I've sat on a panel with Ed Gase really early on when we were just coming out of lockdown. Nice chap. And this really is, I bet Ed and his team and Lloyd's were holding their breath a bit on this one, because what's the conclusion? Well, the spoiler is that actually they say generally, the insider says they think it's a positive thing, the Lloyd's Lab. I think that mainly what the article is saying is that, okay, we can't, it's quite subjective. We can't point to lots of absolute huge successes, and we'll talk a bit about InsurTech funding. But so monetarily, I think this is probably on the weak side in terms of what it's actually done. But what they are saying is that it's building up a sort of ecosystem, overused word, but an ecosystem of advice and some successes. And in a way, I think part of the article is saying the market through this is beginning to learn a lot more about what can and can't work and what you need. So, for example, they say there's now over 200 people in the advisor community. I mean, I always take some of these Lloyd's things with a bit of a pinch of salt, knowing their PR, but 200, okay, so let's call that 25 or something. But I think the point is generally made that actually there are now more and more people who are building, so that if you just keep at these things, they can start to make a difference. And things like how to helping these businesses negotiating funding afterwards is starting to be a help for them. And they've got one example. I think the biggest one they've had so far is a company called Hyper Exponential, which is an actuarial InsurTech, I think, and it had about an 18 million fundraise, which is pretty small beer in the land of tech funding, really. But and Lloyd's has invested £300,000 in another. Ed Gase says he wants to try and create some sort of investment fund around this. I have a bit of a feeling, given what we're going to talk about, they may have missed the boat on that, because that's things are changing in that market, and it's not the best environment to do that. But anyway, good luck to him. But what I also take out of this is that perhaps the slightly random, I would say, personal opinion, random nature of the businesses that go into this and the process of selecting them. They really are a potpourri of types of InsurTech. There's all sorts of weird and wonderful in there, but and maybe those things have in and of themselves not really created that much impact on the market as those businesses, but often it is the catalyst, I suppose, that they create. It's other businesses, and the fact that Lloyd's just has this and it's doing it is valuable. So that's broadly speaking, I would be in the same sort of place, I think, as the insider on this. Is it's not a bad thing. It's been worth investing in. And if you take the view that if you hadn't done this, where would we be? They'd have no skin in the game. So I think they have got skin in the game, and in the Lloyd's market, they are building which is positive, I think, an ecosystem of people are starting to understand how you can integrate these strange insurtech businesses into the traditional insurance market.
And I think I agree with you there as well. I think it's more to do with having an outlet to share ideas, without them being just shut down because, that's the way we've always done them. At least there's a space for the conversation to take place. It's interesting what you say about the kind of the mix of investment in those startups. Not quite often, but in those, when that ecosystem evolves, because you can't just create it, it evolves over time, and perhaps the members in it become more than the sum of the parts. The creative conversations, perhaps part of it, what they were trying to do is to try and bring quite different takes on insurtech, perhaps not necessarily all focused around insurance. They might be focused around other areas, and see if they can actually bring something together that brought something radically new and real change and innovation together. Because that is one thing that we've talked about that really we do struggle with, is genuine innovation and then scaling it into London. So yeah, it's interesting. I've spoken to a lot of people who've taken part in it. We've had them on the innovation stage at Tintech London Market, and they've all got great ideas. It's just kind of how they gel together to make a difference.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing that says that's reported here in the article, in the terms of the people both they've spoken to and I think we've interacted with, is that they are genuinely pretty positive about the experience. Not necessarily because it was an accelerator as such, and it's more that it was, part of the experience was the people, the interaction of ideas, as you say, and someone, for example, like Peter Clark, who's a friend of the show now. He's just done an agreement with a US player. He's moving on and up, which is great for him. I'd say, he'd probably agree, most of the work that he's ever done has been kind of outside of the lab, but the lab was an important stepping stone for that business. And it did give them a little bit of a leg up, both reputationally and maybe actually, as well as an accelerator to at that point in time. So never can these things guarantee success. They just don't. But I think the learning, as you say, evolving over time is the thing that really it starts to tell. And I think you've got to be a bit patient with it, really.
Definitely. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. So, right, keeping with insurtechs, we're looking at their funding, or lack of it, rather.
Yeah. So this is a story that's been splashed around. CB Insights, good organisation, doing a lot of good work on the numbers, if you like, on the trends in insure and fintech businesses. So sometimes these headlines are a bit overdone. I don't think this is. It's a pretty big fall. So in the first quarter of this year, the funding plunged 58%. And what that means in real terms is that it was 5.5 billion last year, and it's 2.2. So that's a big difference. So it's a real one. And when you compare actually insurtech to fintech's only down 18%. So it is all down. I was reading around this a bit and trying to see if I could work out in my amateurish way what was going on. I think there's a number of things. I mean, one is there's quite a few exits. So quite a few of the venture capitalists, VCs, have actually cashed out on these businesses. So I think those M&A exits are up quite a lot, and they all happened around the end of this year. So there may well be a kind of natural cycle of did the investment move through. They've also, I think, hit a bit of a brick wall on the investment side, which is to do with the geopolitics and the world economy as it is and the instability. That's That's true. And I think the other factor that's probably playing in here, and again, this is my amateurish guessing, is that we've seen other articles and speculation that the insurtechs haven't really delivered on the value that they expect. And I think that comes back probably to the speed and the slowness of the industry in adopting technology. So it's never been seen, I think, as the fastest, most lucrative space for the investors. So when you get a slowdown, I think it kind of judders to a halt a bit, which it is here, which is worrying. So the average deal size, for example, now is 19 million. That last year, well, 2021 and 2019, it was 33 million average. So the funding's halved almost. So this is probably the beginning of a quite significant trend. The top 10 deals, there are quite a lot of what they call, there's quite a lot of unicorns that have been created. I think that's a $1 billion business, I think, is it? Yeah, something like that. And maybe it's 100 million. I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. They're the successes and the ones that the VCs are looking for. There are quite a few of those, but that probably is because historically they are now coming to fruition. But it seems like the sense is, well, yeah, kind of done what we can within this sector. We're moving on, or we're just generally slowing down, and this isn't one of our sexy industries anymore. So top 10 deals, Accelerant did do well, has had $190 million in funding. Even that, though, I think compared with some of the fintech businesses, which are huge funding projects, is relatively small. That Accelerant is an underwriting data platform and risk exchange. So that's interesting that it is that's doing well. Actually, I mean that could bode well for the commercial P&C markets that we look at. But generally, yeah, it is a sort of counter to the thing about the Lloyd's Lab, or perhaps not even a counter. I think it's just saying that inherently this sort of investment is quite ephemeral. It's very much subject to the state of the markets in general and the economies. Money will come and go. And so looking forward, I suppose they've got to come up with better ideas, more confidence, I think, perhaps in the industry and its technology future.
And I think probably, and that last point about technology is that if you look back of it, how long has this been going on? 8-9 years since we started to see insurtechs in our terminology, technology companies, startups rather than insurance companies. So insurtechs using, advances in data, computer power, internet speeds, the reduction in cost of storage, and all those things converge to allow that, that's kind of ecosystem of innovative ideas to evolve. And you wonder if that technology is now standard. It's reached a plateau, and we're waiting for whatever the next thing is that is going to drive, that's 6G or whatever else.
Well, I think that's true. And I think the other thing, though, is that we know that there are some very well-established players who are not startups, who I think have probably begun to work, again with that word ecosystem, have begun to say we can do most of this stuff that these small insurtechs have started to do. So I think that if say you look at somebody like Verisk, they have both consolidated their brand and their company globally, and DXC done similarly, I think, but they've been buying players, quietly, if you like, over the last few years. So quite a few of the good ideas, rather like it always does happen in tech, have been bought into those businesses. And I think you then get a bit of a hiatus, but then it builds up so that they say, okay, we've taken all the IP from that, we've understood what that is, and now we're going to scale it up for a large global institution. And I think the problem for small instechs working with big institutions is that they can't get decisions and they're just too small to have any leverage. So you need these kind of incumbent, embedded, almost big players to really start to move the game on. And I think they will. I think that's what's going to happen, because as you say, a lot of it is quite dull back office type stuff that could be done and should have been done many years ago, arguably, but it's not sexy, fancy, new fangled innovation, really. It's just good sort of basic IT legwork. And so that's perhaps where the investors have looked as well and said, well, what's the point if these small businesses are going to get swept away in the future? I'm not going to make my money back.
And I think if you look at those large organizations, the Guidewires, Verisk, DXC, and all the others, they have now spent a lot of money, well, they always used to, on research and development, but more actually on that innovation space. So risking their own money to try and develop the ideas in-house, because they realize that that's the way forward.
And you definitely need scale, don't you? That's the point, is that I think in the research that we've done, and we're not looking at the products per se, but I do think that they feel very small, a lot of the players. You can see the trail off just if you look at the big players, and then players that you do hear quite a lot about anecdotally, but then when you look at the actual figures, you realize, they're just tiny compared with these bigger players. And that is tech business, really. It's how it evolves, how it works. It consolidates very, very quickly into very large players, because obviously things like data, infrastructure, and so on, they need that investment, and they also need the experience. I mean, talent is an issue, so they'll suck the talent in as well. I know that you've said before that they're struggling for talent in lots of these businesses, but that's true across the board. But so I think for your sort of good quality, but not wanting to be a flash, innovative entrepreneur type IT person, they're the places to be, right? And the projects would match what they want. I think.
Yeah, definitely. Good. Right. Thanks for that, Ben. Right, we're doing now. We are going to look at brands through the ages. This should be fun.
Oh yeah, this is fun.
Here we go. Right. Why are we doing this, Ben?
Right, why are we doing it? What's the point of this? So the real point is that Gracechurch is 22 years old this month. I'd forgotten that we were 21 years, no, not 20, 22, 21 years young. 21 today. So anyway, the good and the bad thing about LinkedIn is it reminds you how old you are, and it reminds you how old your business is, and it tells everyone in the world that, which is the last thing you want on a Saturday morning. When you've been out the night before. And anyway, one of the this came up. So we I'll pretend now we're really prepared for this, but actually, the honest truth is we weren't ready. But we started to think about it, and we were already doing something through InsureIndex around brands, as we have talked about before. And we've talked about this for a little while, but now it's come to pass that we're going to develop it. So we've got 21 years, obviously, of brand data in the London market of how these brands have developed. And so this is the start point, really. There's a lot more to come on this, but it's about what were the brands that were leading in 2002, 2002, when we started, versus 2022. Neatly, it's about a generation, so that's quite good. So it sort of relates off to a lot of the leaders as well, although quite a few of them have hung around. So where do we start? So first of all, it's a different list. That if you look at the both lists, you probably expect that to be the case. We haven't really looked at all the changes, but there are a huge number of brands and players in the market. So there's a lot of actual complexity to when you look at it. The other thing is that this is the start point and the end point. What happened in between is almost more interesting. So we had the financial crash. We had major mergers and consolidation going on. We had Brexit. We had lately the pandemic. So we've got all of these events that have happened, both outside and then impacted within the market. So, for example, AIG, which you can see there as number 3 brand in 2022, for quite a large, for a couple of years in the European and London market, was called Chartis because obviously it had gone bust as a result of the financial crash and its activities in there. And so, you know, there are things like that that are just, when you look at it, quite amazing, really, as to how they've happened and survived and come back and so on and so forth. But the first thing I wanted to start with was Lloyd's, first of all, is actually top of that brand list in 2002. So we actually asked the question slightly differently then, and only slightly differently, because at the time we were still in the old world of Lloyd's and then everyone else. So Lloyd's and companies markets brokers were had much more affinity with Lloyd's players, managing agents as they called them. So even the terminology back in the day was different. It wasn't about what we've got today, which are really corporate brands, really, which are, even now, even London market becomes potentially a bit of a redundant phrase, because these are global or very large international players. But Lloyd's was top. So Lloyd's was really seen as an insurer, was named as an insurer by brokers. This is all placing and producing brokers, so it's people who are in the know. And what we saw over the years was Lloyd's as a brand that was named as an insurer, as opposed to whatever it is today, has disappeared largely in London. I suspect if you went outside now still, and this is true, I think, from a recent data, is that Lloyd's is still named by Americans to some extent and by people in Asia and LATAM. Almost the further away you get, Lloyd's becomes a sort of collective term for an insurer in the P&C market still. So there's a bit of that still there, but really it's on the way out. And what you've got is brands coming through. So Wellington was second. Wellington merged with Catlin. And what I've put there in the red is the players who were sort of really kind of a bit on the fringes of the big players there. So Beazley, Limit, which I believe was bought by Liberty at some point, I think, they were quite big. Faraday, which is a Berkshire Hathaway business in the end, still around, but not nearly as big a brand. XL London, we know that was eventually merged with. So all these players are around, but Catlin at that time was very small. So the level of change is pretty significant, I think. And actually, I'm not even showing the numbers here. So there are definitely winners and losers in absolute terms who disappeared altogether. There are, I think we haven't looked at the visuals, but I think the modernity of the names has even changed. So look at RJ Kiln and Co. It's such an old-fashioned name. It's Tokyo Marine Kiln. And I think even Ace, actually, now looking at it, is a sort of naff kind of name for a company, isn't it? It's like the old, it's like Acme or something, you know. It doesn't, and so you kind of feel, probably they were right to probably go with Chubb, because that's it still kind of feels quite modern and a bit fresh. So lot of change. What we want to do is go back and talk to some of the people who were around at the time and get some of the stories out, because I know I've spoken to quite a few of these players, but I haven't done it for a few years. And I think looking at the changes and the shifts and what happened at the time, it would be interesting to get some of the sort of memories of what went on and why they thought it was a good idea to do what they did and where it took them. But it shows how much brand matters.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, especially when you look at that, that list on the right-hand side for now. I mean, they just seem so obvious and established. But then, as you say, when you look back, they've worked on it. It hasn't just happened. They've made decisions, they've invested, and that's the outcome, isn't it? It's
I think they've largely. I mean, So you could take so Munich Re, for example. I think within our Insure Index, that's a top 5 brand. Munich Re is probably. Someone said to me yesterday, we did a guessing game around Insure Index, and everybody guessed 4 of the 5 leaders in our team. It was an InsurTech business, but we didn't put Munich Re in there. That was the one. But actually, it's such a strong, almost household, not quite household, almost a household name that it's been. I was surprised to see it back there in 2002 as being so strong, actually, but it still is. So it shows how a well-invested brand does do that. Funnily enough, the Catlin AXA XL Catlin story is a really interesting story, obviously, and that's Catlin at one point was, particularly in the mid 2000s, was hugely dominant as a brand in the market. AXA XL now is less so. So you've got a lot going on there within the brands as well.
No, really interesting that, Ben. And look forward to seeing some more of that and perhaps some of the stories around it. So we're going to
run some snapshots and things, and try and build it around some of the events and the timing, and get some interviews done. But it'll be cool. Yeah, it's good to look back actually sometimes, isn't it?
It is good. Right, thank you for that. All right, so we're going to close off today by going back to Arsene Wenger. So no, previewing. So next week we've got digital claims. So it's not a London Market event per se, but it is kind of looking at technology, the interplay between technology and humans and claims handlers in the claims experience. And I thought it'd be interesting to, well, firstly, I just thought I'd pick out our friend and friend of the show, Jonathan Clark. He's going to be speaking. So I spoke to him last week, and that's going to be a really interesting talk. As we know, Jonathan's a great speaker and thinker about this subject, and has got a lot of experience in claims. So I'm sure he'll present a very challenging and thought-provoking presentation there, and Ian Thompson's great as well. But I really want you to kind of pick out the results of the pre-event survey. So before all the events, we survey attendees and we ask them what they would like to get out of the day as a whole and what they would like to get out of individual sessions. And we had tons and tons of responses. So I thought I'd put it into a word cloud, because sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. I thought what was quite interesting, this one, was the amount of times that customer or customer experience or a phrase that's related to clients or customers comes out just as you glance through these words, and how little there is around cost reduction or efficiency and things like that. And that's certainly a shift that we've seen that was taking place before the pandemic, but I think has been accelerated as organizations suddenly went, crikey, what is our USP? It's about serving customer and giving them an experience that makes them want to stick with you, but also hopefully you can sell them more stuff as well. And it's at the point of claim is where the service is delivered. So it's
interesting. I mean, I think the industry is pivoting, as they say, towards the customer more and more and more, and that's. I mean, I hate word clouds, as you know, but that does show. If you take those words where customer is actually used, but then there's an interesting one there, key differentiator, customer outcomes. That's really saying that we want to have a performance edge through this. So this is people starting to think about, where does this actually give us, where do we get greater consideration for our products and services, which is good, really. You don't want them to be, if you want competition to work to make it better for the customer. And I don't, it's funny because you have things like when people say, oh, well, what are the customer needs? That's a sort of neutral, oh, well, we kind of grudgingly might meet those needs, as if that wasn't your core job.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. So how is customer needs changing? Well, yes. But it's like, as if that's sort of, that's a sort of side issue, but we'll probably get that right one day. But now it's becoming more central. And it should be right at the heart of everything. It makes business easier in some way.
It does. crystal clear. So that was the first interesting point. I thought I'd draw out that. I'm sure that will frame a lot of the discussions we have next Thursday. I just thought I'd pick out a couple of sort of more pertinent points to the London market that came directly from the survey. Is Blueprint 2, that's off brand, I'm afraid, whoever put that in. It should be small p and 2 little lines, but likely to happen. If so, what is the impact on our claims adjusters? So that's interesting. Again, you know, they're not just going, oh, is it going to happen, but you know, what is the impact on us? And I think that's could be taken as a positive sign for Lloyd's, that people are thinking about this a bit more deeply than when we used to survey them and they went, what is the TOM, or what is the next market modernization thing? So it's good. And then again, back to the customer, balancing digital claims with customer broker engagement, and how do you strike the right balance? We talked about this a lot on the show. It's not just technology, and it's not just call handlers in a call center or however you're set up. It's the interplay of those two things, and how you kind of strike that balance is key.
Yeah, and they're all linked, Jeremy, because that previous word cloud is about the customer, right? That's what we were saying. So what the way it works in any industry when it changes is to say, well, we need to meet customer needs better, and therefore sell more stuff to them. The next question arises is, well, do those needs cost us a lot of money if we're going to invest in meeting them? And you want to optimize that, obviously, as a business, to make sure you create profit. What happens then when you start to consider technology is, rather than just hire more people to do this these days, could technology play a part in that? And that's really what this second point is saying, is what's the sweet spot between enabling that personal service, that whatever that is for a customer to meet their needs, being quick, being courteous, being helpful, advising, whatever it is. How does technology help that? And at the same time, how does it make it cost effective to deliver this better service? And that's about the sweet spot between the two, I think. So it's good, as you say, compared with a few years ago. You found these surveys, when you asked people in the market, a bit dispiriting, because they were saying, what's the next great technology that's coming along that I need to be aware of? And they're not saying that anymore. They're saying, what do we need to do to make sure we optimize the efficiency of what we do, but at the same time increase the customers' appreciation of what we do, so we sell more stuff and make more profit? I think that's a start. That's exactly where we should be going. It's a good problem, and the fundamental problem that you need to solve as an insurance business. But it's great that people are bringing that together.
Yeah, definitely. I just sort of pull out this quote because it makes for a good discussion point. How you maintain a human engagement in an increasingly digital world, and it is not a chatbot. Why? Because I believe millions of years of evolution trumps technology. So people responding to people will remain a key differentiator, in my opinion. Now, I'm not going to argue that people responding to people, and your people within your organization understanding what it is that they do in order to drive the business and meet customer needs, is not going to always be that point of differentiation. I think my contention with this statement is that it underplays the role of technology today and going forward that you will need to engage with in order just to keep pace with your competitors. And I'm going to go back to a graph, this is in the Harvard Business Review, and this is just the adoption rate. It's been shown loads and loads of times at hundreds of conferences. But if you look at the way that technology is adopted over the years, so from 1900 to 1975, there is an arc, there is a curve to that, and when you start to get into VCRs, computers, cellular phones, and the internet, it starts to rise up, and then it shoots up, and you can see that even more in the use of mobile phones and then smartphones as well. And what that tells me, the thing that I take from that as a business person, is that if you are not engaged in those technologies that will jump up and help consumers and enable your business in order to meet those changing customer expectations, then you're going to be left behind. So I get it. I completely understand what that person's saying in there, but I don't think you can stand still and just say, okay, here's some paper, get on with it. There's a phone. You know what I mean? I think
No, I mean, you should have obviously surveyed some chatbots to give it a balanced opinion on that one. But that's prejudiced against chatbots. I've heard this before, actually. It's an interesting little social bit of rhetoric that seems to be about at the moment, which is, oh, these chatbots. People use the word chatbot. Oh, you know what? They're terrible. They don't really work very well. Actually, we've done research where actually live chat, for example, is quite effective in claims service management, and that's the end. You know, the brokers saying that, the claims brokers saying that, not some technologist. It actually is, from the horse's mouth, pretty good if you get it right. Obviously, you've got to get these things right and you've got to make them work. But good quality live chat actually does work, and it's that's the sweet spot, right? That's the halfway house between the human being and the technology. It's a technology-based conversation. Now, I have used those as well, not because they're not all chatbots, and that's why you've always got to think human enablement in these conversations, because otherwise you fall into this trap. It's a bit unfair on this person now. We're going to critique everything that he or she has said, but I think this is the trap, which is either or, and it's not either or, as you say. It's incredibly, but it's not either just saying, oh, it's person with computer. It's actually much more intricate and complex like that. So, for example, you mentioned the mobile phone. You know, human beings' relationship with the mobile phone is incredibly complicated. It's embedded now within society as a whole, the world over. And my youngest daughter has just been given her phone, and that's it. That's the end of me ever talking to her again now, I think. She literally just walks around with this little sort of half light on her face the whole time. And, you know, but it's like a rite of passage, isn't it? Because that's it. She's been asking for it for years. She's now got there. She's it's part of growing up almost. It's not just a piece of technology. It's a signifier of your progression to adulthood and so on and everything else. So these pieces of kit are much more as people interact or integrate with them than just the either or. It's a bit of technology that does this or does that. I think, going back to our earlier conversation, a lot of the insurance technology has been just a piece of kit, a solution in search of a problem, quite often, I'd say, as opposed to being truly integrated technology that makes us do the jobs better and deliver better customer service. Claims teams have always said this phrase, we want the data at our fingertips. What they mean by that is we want it at our fingertips so that we can just impress the hell out of our customers and brokers. It makes your job so much better. It's Bart's point, isn't it? Bart from Genesis saying that technology, when it works, can be magical.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought that was a good quote. I'm sure you'll pick it up. I'll find out who it is and root them out. No, I won't really.
Get them on the show. Answer for your comment.
Feel free to get in touch. The last point really was just to circle back to how I started by going, you know, it's all about the customer. So these are interesting comments. So we have a session that is purely looking at automation and AI. And in the past, you would have seen all sorts of technical questions about how do you integrate AI with, I don't know, my call center, core platform or whatever else. But now if you look at these, I've just highlighted some there. They're all about kind of customers or your workforce or delivering a better experience. So it's, I think it's just very positive at the moment, you know, that where the conversation is and where it's going. And yeah, I'm looking forward to next week.
Last point is good. Why the resistance? Because that is difficult. I mean, I don't necessarily think anybody really knows the answer to that. Some things get adopted, some things don't. I think part of it is that people who've invented the thing in the first place or want to implement it, that's their job, and they become sort of a bit evangelical about it, and it's, but somehow it doesn't work like that. As I said before, it's almost more organic. Certain things work, certain things don't. There's been a lot of work done actually, which I was looking at a few years ago and might do again, is that many of the big tech companies have started to look and research in detail what the byproducts of their software is. So in other words, the original intent of the software was to do X, Y, and Z, and everybody thought that's what all the tech coding people and the software people thought, what a great idea, that's going to be brilliant, that's going to change the world, and we're going to be rich. In fact, what happens often, like many products and services, is some small byproduct of that actually is massively more important than the thing you thought would be the most important thing. And I don't think that's any different in technology. And it's back to the idea, we don't really know what the future is, and we don't really know how this, but technology has and AI in particular, has a sort of organic element to it that when it's mixed with humans and their development in workplaces, I suppose, is something quite different can emerge than you expected. And I think that's says something to that final question about should we sell this in, or should we introduce things in different ways for people in teams? I think I know that if I go, I mean, I've sold things. I've not sold technology particularly, but I think if you go to teams, I suppose you and I both had a bet with CRM. It's a good one to land on. CRM is often, I know what CRM is supposed to do, ideally. Does it ever do it? No, not really. It does it about 80% of what I would ever want, I think, because it somehow doesn't, it's not a nirvana. But people always sell you CRM really hard. You know, like, it's going to do this and it's going to be amazing, it's going to be brilliant, and all you have to do is press this button and everything will just splurge out. All of my experience with CRM is you still end up doing a lot of manual stuff for various unknown reasons, you know, and but some of the byproducts are really useful. So there's a little perceptual gap somewhere often between technology and what it's supposed to do and what it actually does. And I wonder if you just have much more of this kind of user development, almost like phones and apps and things, as opposed to big ideas. But this looks great. I think it's going to be a really good, you'll have a really good session on this.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. I'm looking forward to it next Thursday. Yeah, we've got a lot of London market companies represented. So yeah, it should be, it's an interesting conference because we do bring together kind of GI, SME, you know, large corporate carriers and brokers together. So it's often quite an interesting conversation. So looking forward to that. Good. Right, that rounds up for today. So what are you doing this weekend, Ben? Anything?
Bit of cycling, out on the bike again tomorrow. Haven't been out as much as I said I would, but I've got to go out again tomorrow. So I'm feeling that feeling in the pit of my stomach that I've actually got to do it tomorrow morning. Be all right. Be all right.
Once you're on it, it's all right, isn't it? I think I'll be doing the same. Hopefully the weather stays dry, and so it's all a bit different. It's always weird when you come back to work after having time off, isn't it? That first day back, you're just going, "Oh my god, what do I do?"
Yeah. What's my job? Yeah, exactly. That's you'd forget it very quickly.
Yeah, you would.
If you stopped
on a desert island somewhere. But, anyway.
Yeah, nice idea.
Okay, good. Thanks everyone.
So we've got a good show next week, probably, haven't we? Might not be here.
We might not be here next week. It all depends.
On location somewhere else.
We may be on location. But if we are, we are. If we're not, we'll see you the following week. Have a nice weekend.
Yeah.